Hello and welcome to the Bravas Luxury Living Podcast. On the Luxury Living Podcast, we explore ideas and themes about how you can make your luxury home easier to work, rest, and play in. If this is the first time you found the Luxury Living Podcast, please share, tell your granny, do something to let somebody else know about us. You'll find us on YouTube and all your favorite podcasting places. I do this podcast every week with Keith Brown from our Dallas office. Hello, Keith.
How are you doing, Nigel?
I'm doing great. And Keith, we're going to go a slightly different way this time. Normally, we're focused on technology as our clients, and I'm going to pull my privilege and have a slightly different conversation, which I hope people will find interesting. But it's a project that Bravas has got involved in, and we think people will enjoy it. And so I'm going to introduce the two guests today. These are friends and colleagues of mine from another world. John Predo from Las Vegas. Hello, John.
Hi there, guys. How are you? Glad to be here today.
Thank you. And Keenan Campbell from Northern Illinois. Hey, Keenan.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having us.
All right. So we'll explain in a minute why we're going to talk about rockets and what this has to do with AMD and luxury homes and stuff. But it's we always like to let people introduce themselves. So maybe, John, you should start. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your background is.
Great. Thank you, Nigel. My name is John Predo. I'm born and raised in Las Vegas. Lived here my entire life except for college. Came back to Las Vegas and started entrepreneurial efforts. So I have degrees in business and also engineering, and started off on my own doing technology and got involved in networking very, very early on and did computer networking for many years, and then got into streaming media in 1996. And I'm one of the grandfathers of the streaming media business. We were a Wall Street finance company. We raised $70 million for that company. We developed some very early streaming technology in the mid-90s. And then I went around the country producing these live stream deals. I did the PGA, the LPGA, DNC convention, Kelsey Grammer, Joe Walsh. I would go around and produce those and then broadcast those onto the internet. And then after streaming, and then after 2001, when the market crashed, otherwise I wouldn't be here today because our company was just going public that month, and I'd be on a beach somewhere, Nigel. I wouldn't be here with you.
Well, I guess I'm sorry for that, but
yeah, me too. Missed it by that much. 2014 got involved in crypto, actually earlier than that. My friend sent me an email in 2011 about this thing called Bitcoin. And so I started mining back then, which I had no idea what it was. I just had a machine running the Bitcoin client on a PC, and it ran and ran and ran for a couple months. Nothing ever happened. Turned it off, but then got re-involved in Bitcoin 2014. We actually developed our own coin in 2016. And then from 2016 to 2019, I traveled around the world doing lectures on cryptocurrency, blockchain, and I'm done with travel now, Nigel, so I like to stay home. And then since the pandemic, I've been sitting home with this group of guys, including Nigel and Keenan, and I created a new company because everybody was doing online events poorly, and I founded a company called Talent Pros Live, and we do digital first events for large corporations and government entities, etc.
Okay, well, we may have to come back and talk crypto at some point because I'm sure I'm missing out with all this technology doing no mining. Keenan, what's your background?
So my background is actually electrical engineering. I spent 8 years working for a large defense contractor designing advanced power generation systems for military trucks. While it was great for a career, it wasn't great for family life and home life to be gone for 21 days a month straight. So I'd always had a public service background, being a second generation volunteer, firefighter, EMT, those kind of jobs. So emergency management was a natural fit because of an analytical background. It helps you to build emergency plans when you have the analytical side. So a few years ago, I met my friend John, and we were looking at improving our digital presence. As an emergency management agency, we're producing a product for every citizen to self-solve. So the better my image looks, the better my audio sounds. It's taken more authoritatively. The citizens really look at that and say, okay, these guys have a professional studio. So I found that group with John, and we've used that. That was kind of my into the group that I needed to improve our product. So coming from an engineering background, though, it was a natural fit that Predo and I had this idea for a rocket launch live stream that worked with this Talent Pro. So that was kind of all of our connections in that. I come from an engineering side. I happen to be an emergency manager, and I'm in AV production with these guys.
So I really want to explore some of the ideas of looking more effective and what people can do and what your experiences are. But we're actually here to talk about a rocket launch. So when I tell people, John, that I'm involved in a rocket launch, they look at me quizzically, surprised, confused. When we say rocket, what are we talking about?
So, Elon Musk and what's his name over at Amazon, Jeff Bezos, have made this easier. If you said you were into rockets 10 years ago, people looked at you very, very strangely. My father was a radiologist. He used to take us out in the desert in the 60s when the Apollo program was big. So in the late 60s, early 70s, my dad would take us out into the nowhere of Las Vegas and launch the little baby Estes rockets that you buy at, Walmart for $10. And that hobby kind of stuck. We did that for several years with my family, and then just kind of grew out of it when I was in my teenage years. And then when I got back into college, I was at the hobby shop and I saw a big motor on the wall that you couldn't buy back in the old days. It was a G-size motor. And I got all excited about rocketry again in the mid-'80s and got recertified. There's two national organizations, AAA and National Association of Rocketry, NAR. And there's this whole level of rocketry above the Estes level called high-powered rocketry based upon how big the motors are. And you get involved with one of these national organizations and you kind of ascend through the ranks on building rockets. And so one of my claim to fame is I did the very first live streaming rocket from an amateur rocket in 2001, March of 2001. And so that was significant technology back then. It was 21 years ago this year that I launched that rocket called VidRock. And that was a 14-foot tall rocket with the live camera on board.
So what are you launching and when?
So we're launching a rocket that is a 12-foot all fiberglass rocket. It's about 100 pounds. The motor is an N-class motor. Expected altitude is just under 15,000 feet. It's got 2 flight computers on it. We've got live telemetry. It's very sophisticated rocket, and we're launching that on March 19th, hopefully around 9 o'clock window, and that will be streamed live on oh-space.com.
And we'll give people that again. Now, where is this leaving from? Because it's not down. You're not leaving from the center of Vegas, are you?
We're launching this rocket at Jean Dry Lake, which is about 10 miles south of the M Resort on Las Vegas Boulevard. They say it's about 20 miles south of Las Vegas. There's a dry lake bed there. And there's a club in Las Vegas, a local club. They get together for a regional launch, and there'll be a couple hundred people out there. In addition to my project, there'll be another 50 to 100 people actually launching rockets out there. I'm sure this rocket will be the largest of the weekend for this motor. It's significant size motor, significant cost associated with this project.
So Keenan, how did you get involved in this? I think you knew John, but what's your role going to be in all of this?
So I don't know. One night we were sitting around in our Zoom meeting, and John was talking about his rocket launch, and myself and Chris Fenwick were sitting there, and I just made a comment, man, we should make this like SpaceX, but better, and better graphics and better telemetry and everything better. And Chris jumped on it, and John did, and so I became the project manager directly under John Predo to just kind of help put it all together. And now we have a production team of 55 people, both in person and remote. We'll probably have 25 to 30 people on the dry lake bed with the balance supporting us remotely with other graphics packages and data. And then we have a host from Australia that will participate. She's part of the Australian Space Agency. So Vienna will be one of our on-air hosts, all remote. So the production's going to go to the cloud. It's truly a huge lift of a production, even with the vast amount of resources we have, both in person and remote, to put this project together. It's going to be an hour to an hour and a half show, depending on the weather window and regulatory approvals, because we have to get permission from the airport to launch that rocket. Obviously, they don't want to have a plane in that airspace. So we have to build packages to put it together that the show could be an hour and a half live. Yeah,
I was going to dig slightly bit into that point, John, that you're not just allowed to let a rocket off, without permission, are you, to go 15,000 feet? My guess is there are some restrictions here.
Yeah, so the national organizations allow for high-powered rocketry. Number one, we have insurance for all of the associated clubs. There's, about 100 local clubs around the world that belong to Tripoli. Our local club, for example, has a standing waiver at this launch site to 7,500 feet with call-ins to 15,000 feet. And so we can shoot all day long out there as long as we notify them that we're shooting rockets at 7,500 feet. Anything above that window, we call to McCarran International Airport. I guess it's called Harry Reid International Airport now. And they give us a flight window of a altitude up to 15,000 feet. So we call the tower, and they'll call us, and they'll tell us you can launch from 9 to 9:15 up to 15,000 feet. In addition to that, we have the national organization certifying flyers, level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3. And this actual launch is for me to regain my level 3 certification. My rocket prior, VidRock, was my level 3 back in 2001. But in 2008, when the economy wasn't doing so well, I didn't pay my national dues. And I didn't know when you don't pay your national dues, your certification goes back to 0. So last year, I got my level 1 and level 2 certifications with the written exam. And then this project here is a level 3 project, which is designed and approved, and then a big book of documentation on the rocket, simmed out on the computer for the entire flight, submitted to the board. They approve it, and we're clear for takeoff now on March 19th.
So, John, you said you can fly them up to 15,000 feet, and your goal is to be just below 15,000 feet. How do you dial it in that tightly?
So we have a program called RockSim, which is a simulator that's extremely accurate. And so right now it sims out to 14,950 in that range. And the rocket's going to be a little heavier than it is in the simulation, so it will probably do less. Anything above 14,000 feet for us is a win. And so that's what we're shooting for. If I go over 15,000 feet, I don't get my certification. So it's that critical.
Wow. And I guess for you putting on this live stream, the AV side of it, we always say it's not rocket science, but which one's actually harder? Is it the live stream or is it the rocket science?
The live stream, if we were to pay for this as a volunteer group, is got to be $250,000. We've got a real producer coming out with this real production, and he's doing, professional tennis. He's bringing a real production bus out to the dry lake bed. We're going to have, 9 cameras, 2 drones. Everything is going to be produced up in the cloud. We've got remote contributors to the project. The AV side of this is very significant.
And Keenan, the interesting thing here is that we're all used to working in productions or places where everybody gets into the same room and we all get in the same office. And this has really formed. I mean, John's physically having to build the rocket, but the rest of us are involved completely virtually. It's really sort of the proof of the last couple of years, isn't it?
Well, and that's the thing, where our meetings are on Zoom, so everything's been virtual. We now have our Zoom room every single day. We're doing a production meeting every Friday. The teams So we have our live production teams, the people producing packages, putting everything together. They're all meeting holistically outside of John and I, and then they're reporting back on Fridays. But literally, none of these guys have worked in person together. One of our drone pilots came in and flew some B-roll footage that the editors needed for the pre-roll package, and that was the first time that John actually met Jack. So it's really neat that there's a dynamic here that we're all friends and colleagues and we're working together, and most of us have never actually met each other in person. A handful have, but for a lot of us, it'll be the first time that we're actually meeting in person. And it's incredible what the last 2 years have showed us what is really possible, what corporations can do and what families can do. Not meeting John in person, or you, Nigel, or any of you guys, I feel 100% comfortable that when I do, there's not that new friend jitter. Oh, I don't know this guy. I've talked to him on the phone a few times. I mean, there is a personal connection because you see your mannerisms, you see our faces. We have good cameras and lighting, and all of that stuff lends to a positive experience. And I will tell you, to have 55 different personalities, not one argument. It's unbelievable. There's just not been an argument.
With John's an easy person to argue with.
Those are offline discussions, but not related to the rocket. But as far as the team dynamic goes, we're proving that a global production can be done completely virtually. You can do it. You just need the right gear, the right camera. If the microphone's not good, the meetings aren't good. So that's one thing that we found with our OH Space project, that the gear has to be up to par. And I think John's on the low side of $250K for the production. I think it's closer to $500,000 when you look at the resources, the time, the talent, and if we had to bring in a production company, I think we're over $500,000. It's unbelievable. And these people are all coming in from all over the US and the world.
It's interesting that you say that, just that you talk about how you're pulling off something that you probably couldn't have easily pulled off just using local resources. I think we've kind of seen that in our own businesses. As we are starting to work together remotely, we're really getting the benefit of combining people's knowledge. And Keenan, your point is very well made. Like, we just had our sales summit for Bravas nationally, and we brought everybody together, people that had been working together for 2 years plus and had never met. And it is amazing how being able to meet virtually allows you meet somebody for the first time and realize, oh my gosh, I've never actually met this person in person. That was such a surprise to me.
I have another example of that. Real quick, sorry, Keenan. I have another example of that. We're working on the live telemetry right now. We have a programmer in Germany. We have a graphics guy in Finland. We have people in the United States. We have the developers of the flight computers all over the United States here, all working together, mostly over Zoom. We also use a program called Discord. It's like Slack Lite, and it allows us to easily memorialize communication in that platform. So a combination of both Discord and Zoom meld together real nicely for us to pull this project off.
My guess, though, John, is when we talk to many of our customers who are, homeowners of large luxury homes, run businesses, run companies, or we talk to designers or builder architects who are building homes and designing them for those people, their view is that Zoom is a really inefficient, these sort of virtual tools is a really inefficient way to run business. You can't really run business that way. And Keenan touched on some of this, but I'd like both of you to give me your thoughts on why have you been more effective at doing something so complicated with people that don't know each other when we can work virtually on Zoom or on Teams or something and be completely ineffective with people we do know? What's your thoughts on that?
So,
Keenan, go ahead.
The one thing that I've seen is time. If I need to have a call with John, it's a matter of me sending out a Zoom link to John and the pertinent team members and saying, hey guys, jump on a Zoom. And within 3 minutes, my windows start popping up that there they all are. We address the issue. We're all face to face. We're collaborating. And then we move on with our day and move on to the next project. It goes to the same with our live production team. I'm not managing them every single day. As the project manager, they're reporting up to us and we're putting out the fires that come. But John and I aren't involved in every single part of this project. They're just reporting it on Fridays to us. So they're having their own Zoom meetings. And a term that I heard, or I don't know if we coined it, was boardroom to the bedroom. Most people are in a spare bedroom. If we don't have a luxury home, Nigel, this is my second bedroom that I've created into a space that I can be as professional and have my own office at home. So I don't see why, if we can do it, any CEO should be able to run their company from a spare bedroom and build that space with, we've stressed microphones, good cameras, a little bit of lighting. Those three things are key to being successful. And you can't tell what's behind my backdrop here. I look just as professional when I'm running my county calls, or I'm running, and you could make it look like a boardroom if you really wanted to. So I think the digital divide is that with good audio, good lighting, and good camera, anybody can run a Fortune 500 company from home and be super successful at it.
Where would you start on that list, John? What's the most important thing people should think through?
So Keenan hit it. So I want to highlight a couple things there. You heard about this thing called Zoom fatigue. And Zoom fatigue is not what you think it is. It's not being on Zoom all day. It's being on Zoom with talking to somebody that has a bad camera and a bad microphone and bad lighting. That causes Zoom fatigue. That would be equivalent to talking to somebody on a speaker phone that you could barely hear. That causes fatigue and frustration very quickly. And our team members come out of on the media production side. So we all have professional cameras, professional microphones, decent lighting, or good lighting, good to normal lighting, depending on the studio. But that's all sensitive to communication. And so we have a analogy that we like to use for video conferencing these days. Looking good on Zoom is the new business suit. And so do you want to look like Brioni, or do you want to look like J.C. Penney? How you look, your camera, and how you sound, and your set determines how people perceive you in communicating with people within Zoom or Teams. And so it really differentiates you when you come onto a call and you've got a real microphone, good lights, and a good camera. I mean, everybody else is in a spare bedroom with boxes in the back, and then you come in looking like Nigel does and Keenan, and you stand out from those people. And then after the call, they call you up and they want to know what camera you're using and what microphone you're using. It's really funny. We see that happen over and over again. And Nigel, further, I started a company in the middle of the pandemic. I haven't met but maybe one or two of the team members within this company, and we're producing of digital first events for Fortune 500 companies, all remote, all out of our home studios. We're producing these events. And so, and I've been doing this for a long time, but my contemporaries, my age, always, relegate back to the good old times of when we could all get together. I don't want to get together. I like staying at my house talking to people on Zoom. And I've built better relationship on Zoom in the past 2 years than I have 2 decades in real life.
Now, we did a piece of work, John, a few months ago on a Zoom call to try and price out what a good office is. And the four of us may be examples of people who spend too much money doing this, but you don't have to spend $10,000 to you to get a good looking system. What would you say was a good way into a decent home office system?
So we stratified those into a bronze, a silver, and a gold, right? And so for about $1,000, we could get a decent looking system for about $1,000. Now, if you bump up to about the $5,000 range, you're really, really getting a good look. And the gold package is about $20,000. So the studio that I have over here is my professional studio. It's a stand-up desk, so I'm not as comfortable sitting. My regular desk that I am here is $20,000, and that's all high-end gear. So, from $1,000 to $5,000 to $20,000, depending on your budget, will differentiate the gear.
So I was just going to say, if somebody wanted to look better tomorrow, what's an easy step they could take?
Better camera.
And microphone. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Mic and camera phone.
Yeah, because if you're going to use the internal laptop camera, the issue is right now my camera is above my laptop, so I am looking down at you guys a little bit. Most guys would put a teleprompter up here so we can be present. I don't have that set up yet, but I'm running a 6K camera and a microphone. These are the two things that are going to make. And then the other thing is in-ear monitors, inexpensive $100 earbuds that are kind of unobtrusive. When I'm looking directly at you guys, you barely see them. So that's something to take care of the echo cancellation. But what we've always said for 2 years is if you can fix your audio, your audience can be present. Your video can turn off. I don't need to see you, but I need to hear what you're telling me. And Nigel, you've said that as the CEO, your company has to hear you. They don't necessarily need to see you. It helps. But I would focus on audio first and maybe some type of a Logitech Brio. Again, a sub couple $100 camera. The ones we use are the Blackmagic 6Ks. So that's a higher end camera, higher end lensing, but it gives you a better, you can see my backdrop is a little bit blurred, has a little bokeh. So you're not looking behind me. Yeah, it's got a little interest, but I try to keep mine more sanitary. Some people like more stuff behind them. Personally, I think I want to be present to you. So that's.
And Keith, you're using your still camera, aren't you?
Yeah, I have a Sony something. Sony A6500, I think, is what I'm running now.
It's a great camera.
Yeah. Well, and as far as the background goes, obviously you and Nigel look great in a dedicated background like that. I just kind of angled myself where I had something somewhat interesting behind me, and I'm facing a window, so I don't have to have lights set up in my room because this is the first room you see when you walk in our house. But if somebody just wants to take the space they're in and make it look a little bit better or make themselves look more professional, any like really easy tips they could use?
Last light backdrop. Put a backdrop.
We have?
Well, but for a small amount of money, a pop-up gray backdrop, it's fabric. Cover all that stuff. For lack of a better term, all that junk that's behind you, the kids' toy room, you don't need to know that this is a spare bedroom and there's a closet behind this backdrop. That would be the number one thing. Yours is visually interesting. John's got his look on his, but if I were the CEO, I wouldn't want all that stuff, because is it detracting your guys, the focus of their eyes to stuff in the room? That's kind of how we've looked at it. That I want you to be focused on what we're talking about and be present with me. So I try to minimalist it. Others do put interesting lighting and things like that. I put a small lamp just for some lighting, but the backdrop's going to be the cheapest, couple $100 fix.
Well, and it's also interesting. It doesn't sound like there's a right way to do it. It's what image you want to present and just thinking through and making a decision about it.
No virtual backdrops. Don't use the virtual anything. You will always cut off your forehead, cut off your ear. The virtual backdrops, while the software companies have tried to make those good, they are subpar at best. If you can't put a physical gray sheet up behind you, and we use gray because it can be lit any color. You don't want black, it's too dark. You don't want white because it'll reflect the light. So Last-A-Light makes a really nice gray backdrop. It's 18% gray is the official TV term for the color. Even if you paint the wall gray, it's something better behind you. So but no virtual backdrops, please. Those are painful.
Yeah, I used that Last-A-Light for a long time, and once you've worked out how to fold it up, which is a bit like trying to build your own pretzel. When John, you've got the skill, it took me. I still have to go to YouTube every time I try and put it up, take it apart. But I'm guessing, John, that your background looks like that because you're also trying to send a message about you and your business, aren't you?
Well, this is my desk, and so before we started the broadcast today, I was set up at my broadcasting station. It's not as busy. And it's a pro camera. It's a high-end Sony A7 III, which is one step above Keith's camera. And it's stunning compared to this camera. This is a Brio. This is $200, and it's okay. This is like a men's warehouse suit, I would say. But the next step up, is a huge difference between the Brio and a real camera, which is $2,500 for the body of the camera and about another $1,000 for the lens, but it's really going to make a huge difference. I mean, compare my footage against Keenan's and you can see the difference right away. And setting up the room is a difficult thing because of lighting. So that light coming in the background, you should never be there. You should not have anything brighter than you in the background, because it takes focus away, like Keenan said. And so setting up the set, as it were, for a room can be a difficult thing. Finding the right angle and getting the audio right is a whole nother conversation. So there's a lot of variables to get this right, actually.
The other variable, you just went dark, so I think you were showing the power of the lighting. The other important thing here is there's a choreography to who speaks on things. And I know the other problem I have with Zoom or Teams call is when everybody tries to talk at the same time. Keenan, that's probably very important in the emergency management, that you don't get detail lost in that. How do you manage that?
So what we do, and our agency is pretty well organized. So when we do our emergency operations center, everybody has a Shure gooseneck microphone with a mute button, a physical mute, red light, and we'll call on them and they give out their reports. So it's kind of like herding cats. Sometimes people always want to speak, but we also we port all the microphones back to master control so we can globally mute everybody. That does help us on our Zoom calls because each operator position has a mic that has a physical mute, plus we can mute it in the mixer. So I don't have to worry about somebody stepping over too many others because I can just kill their audio. So having good discipline, your team will learn. Especially Nigel, as a CEO, when you run a meeting, they learn how you run the meeting and your operational tempo. So people start to learn that on Zoom. And, even in OH space, we've only had one or two people that tend to interrupt us. Most of them kind of wait their turn and they're very respectful and they can handle it. But we just do course correction with them and let them know, hey, just stop talking where you interrupted. And usually your team will get that and it can be effective, but you need somebody running the mute buttons remotely. So if you have to, especially with the larger scale events, we want to make sure we have somebody that can do mute button control.
The other thing I find is if you are using Zoom, you can, in the settings, set a global key for mute. And then I use a Mac, I have a big keyboard, my F19 key is that mute. And it becomes a habit just to press the mute key when you're not talking. So you can be generous, as you say, for other people. Okay, I'm going to go back to the rocket a bit. John, I wonder, we talked about having someone from the Australian Space Agency. For people who are listening in who have kids, is there an educational part of this rocket thing that might be interesting?
The Cub Scouts, or whatever they're called now, the Boy Scouts, actually have rocketry as part of their curriculum and a merit badge. And we often have them out to our launches here in Las Vegas. And so I see that, unless there's a knowledgeable father or neighborhood. I was the neighborhood dad, so all the kids came to my house and hung out there, and I used to take them out to do rockets. I haven't seen any formal type of education for children, but I can tell you this: if you do take the kids out to launch rockets, they'll be very, very excited about it because it's fun. It's fun for the kids. I get a tear in my eye because let me tell you what happened. Our hobby almost died after 9/11. The FAA grounded all hobby rockets and radio-controlled planes for a year. Killed the hobby. And then shortly adjacent to that, the number one manufacturer of our motors burnt to the ground here in Las Vegas. And that was 2001 timeframe, 2002. That killed our hobby for years. And now with Bezos and Musk flying rockets again, I see tons and tons of renewed interest in the hobby now. And having 20 kids out there running around flying their little Estes out is music to my heart. So that's all I can say is I think the Scouts do a good job of introducing that to the kids, or as a fun thing to do as a parent, buy a little kit at Walmart or Hobby Lobby or whatever for your kid and go fly a rocket with them. They'll really enjoy it.
Keenan, what about the lessons for the virtual community here for kids?
So we're going to have an incredible amount of footage. We are doing the live stream, and we'll have that show. But we've engaged college professors, educators from across the world on how do we package this rocket launch as a STEM or STEAM program, build curricula, lesson plans, activities. So we couldn't pull it off in the 3 months that we had to do this production. But what we're going to do is regurgitate all of that video and all of that materials, and then we're going to give it to the educators and say, okay, here's your bank of footage and what we shot, and they're going to work on collaborating to build this into a program to get again, we're not sure of the age range. We thought K through 8, but then some of the educators said, oh, maybe 6 through 8, maybe 6 through 12. So we're not educators. We can teach, but we're not formal teachers. So we wanted to really rely on a few. Dr. Idelson's one of our group members. He was a professor in Cal State Monterey. So we're going to have Mr. Idelson or Dr. Idelson help us build curricula with other teachers to make it something, because again, John and I are engineers and production people. I don't know how to make it check all the boxes for the school teachers. We know there's an incredible amount of value here. It's just a matter of how do we craft that into a package that they can use offline. So they'll get to watch the rocket launch. We hope everybody watches the live production, because there's going to be an incredible amount of content with Vienna talking about space and space medicine. So there'll be a lot in that hour and a half, but then there's hundreds of hours of extra footage that we're gonna work into the package. So I'm excited to see what the prospects are, because we're all, coming from engineering, STEAM and STEM. That's kind of our baby. We need more engineers. So hopefully we can incite a little bit of excitement with the kids to pursue this as a career path.
I love it because it involves both the fun stuff about sending a rocket up, and 15,000 feet is no mean, height to send anything else to, but it's also using technology and the collaboration that we've all been using over the last 2 years, and really shows you how the industry and broadcast is going to transform. Listen, we'll give the details out in a minute, again, how they can follow you. Before we let you guys go, we always play a bit of a game with our guests to try and get an insight into their technology. And you guys don't know what these questions are because we haven't forewarned you. So you'll have to think quick. So the first one is easy. When it comes to home technology, is there a home technology that you think you couldn't live without? John, what's the piece of home automation? Do you have any that you think you couldn't live without?
I have a ton of home automation, but you can't live without high-speed bandwidth.
Right. Tough to do this without that. What about you, Keenan?
I'm going to say my smart thermostat, because I'm incredibly cheap, and being an emergency manager, I may not be home for the night, and I know that I can keep my furnace and everything. I really love the smart thermostats for not only the cost saving, but it helps the environment a little bit.
That's great. So the second question, John, is when you think back on your varied career, is there one client-facing project? Is there one particular project you got involved in when you think back and you go, wow?
Working with Joe Walsh was probably one of the highlights of my career. He was great, and he used to broadcast from his home. We did the same with Kelsey Grammer. Both those guys living in Hollywood, and they used our technology to broadcast from home. This is 2001. This is 20 years ago. But empowering those guys to talk to their audience from home 20 years ago really, really was a paradigm shift back then.
And Keith, I hate to ask you, was there a big disaster that you're particularly proud of? But is there is there one you managed the technology for?
I probably shouldn't comment on that because we manage the technology on all of them. But what I will say, World Ocean Days, I was asked to come out to Cal State Parks to help them run a live production where we had two-way communication via Zoom to the divers under the Point Lobos kelp bed. And to see those kids that are already virtual in California in a Zoom room, and their eyes lit up when they said, okay, little Johnny, it's time to ask your question. He asked this question to the diver, and the diver goes, Johnny, that's a great question. The kelp forest is, and the child realizes this is live. You just put two-way audio to a diver under the ocean in California, live streamed it to a classroom all over the world. that project was the one that made me look at all this stuff and go, you know what? Video production is so vast, and it doesn't have to be the CBS and the stat trucks and all that. It was us with some computers and some audio gear, and I made a kid in California talk to a diver 300 feet under the ocean, and the diver talked back, and they had a conversation in real time. Hey man, I'll do that every day of the week, no matter if you pay me or not. I mean, that was just the one project. Unbelievable.
Why is it always little Johnny? Why is it always...
Says Johnny. So the third question is, if there was a technology that hasn't yet been invented, this is a slightly tougher question. Is there a gadget that doesn't exist that you would really like to exist? What would it be, John?
Fusion power.
So you want
the moon.
Yeah. So you're going to the moon with the next rocket then.
Fusion power. That solves a lot of world problems.
And what about you, Keenan?
You know what? I hate to say it. I think John took my answer, but I mean, if we can, you're right. If you can provide clean, reliable energy worldwide with little risk, we're a fan of nuclear. Some are, some aren't. But if you could come up with some type of a power source that every country, and then my second question, since John stole my first one, is I would say clean water for everybody. Find a way to desalinate and provide clean water. Every part of that, I don't understand why that's a thing that we haven't figured out how to desalinate for all of these third world countries or impoverished countries. Why they don't have clean water? That would be mine. So I'll take clean water over John's fission power.
That makes my automatic avocado toast machine. My automatic avocado toast machine also all of a sudden sounds very self-serving.
Sorry, we're a little deeper,
Well,
a little bit.
But you're more likely to get your avocado self-service machine before we are clean water, sadly, even though we know how to do it.
I'll put my research into theirs.
I've been in the home automation business for 40 years probably with X10 modules back to Radio Shack. I have all Lutron switches in my house, and I use Apple HomeKit to control most of my stuff here. But they're still missing they're this far away. I mean, the stuff that you guys do is a whole nother level. But for the normal person, so my garage, I can open my front door, my garage door, turn on all my lights, all my thermostats, my pool, all that stuff is fully automated. I've been doing it for decades.
Well, we look forward to coming and trying to sell you more, John. We'll be there in a few weeks. How can people follow along this rocket program at home?
So the URL, go ahead, Keenan, give it to him.
All right, so oh-space.com is the website. You can follow along. The live stream will be there. John's been doing all kinds of work building the rocket, and there is 15 or 20 days worth of construction videos that run as a playlist. So for kids, they can see how many hours went into sanding the rocket and build. So when people hear that it's a kit, they think, oh yeah, you just put it together and it goes. It's not a kit. It is a kit, but there's a ton of work that had to be done. The live stream is out there. The team story is out there. So we're working on a lot of other angles of documentaries and things like that. And then Instagram, we're posting every week on OH_space_22. I think Bravas had a post on there that they may have shared. So that might be an easier way to.
And we'll make sure these links are easy to everyone get. And the takeoff date is what, John?
March 19th, 9 a.m. That's the primary launch window.
9 a.m. Pacific.
Correct, yes.
Well, we will be watching. I will try and be there. And we're grateful for you joining us and for the insight. And we'll wish you well and safe flying. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the time.